So for this first video, I want to try and incorporate most of the main subjects I'm going to have on this channel, so like art, engineering, juggling, that sort of stuff. But I don't want to go too crazy because it's my first video and a lot of this stuff is pretty new to me. It's been years since I've really done video editing, and I was using Movie Maker before, and there are a lot more just buttons and things in this. So I have a lot of project ideas, but I don't want to be learning new equipment and software while I'm also trying to learn how to film and edit and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to start with something a little bit more laid back. Not going to be stupid simple, but I don't know. We'll get into it. Let's talk about what I was thinking. So my plan here was to center the project around 3D printing, but again, I don't want to go crazy in this video, so I figured I'd just do a custom desk lamp thing. I thought it would be kind of cool to do like a juggling themed one. I don't know. Anyway, I'll get more into the 3D printer stuff in a bit, but the important thing for right now is that the one that I will be using can print anything within a cube of 7" or roughly 18 centimeter sides. So that's pretty small in terms of lamps, and that adds a couple of challenges for me here. For one, I'm probably going to want to make it at least a little bit bigger than that, which means designing some kind of interlocking pieces. With that said, it's probably still going to be a little bit small for a lamp, which means I can't just plug in a normal light bulb. I'm going to have to use some sort of LED or LED array thing, and I want to be able to plug it into a wall, so I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of math on that, because wall power's, what, 120 volts, and an LED is normally like 3. So, yeah, that would just kind of blow up. Anyway, let's get started on some actual concepts here. So there are 3 main types of juggling props that get used. You have rings, balls, and clubs that are poorly drawn, but you get the idea. And my plan here is to take all of these and kind of combine them into one thing. So, generally speaking, the ring seems to me like it would make a good base platform. And then from here I can use the balls in some kind of array so that it looks like I'm leaning a club onto it. And then the head of the club up here, I can cut out a little section and put in some LEDs so that it shines light down in that direction. But mostly to practice this drawing software because I'm new at it, I'm gonna draw this up a little bit better and come back in a second. And there we go. A slightly better drawing of what I was talking about. Again, I'm just kind of trying to learn the software, so it doesn't matter too much how this looks, but it's there. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to a little bit of 3D modeling stuff because I need to have a model to be able to print it. So I was gonna go over some of the footage of actually making this thing originally, but it was really boring, so here we are. I made a basic model of what I want the lamp to be. I didn't put in any of the specific stuff because I want to mess around with the LEDs first to see sort of how I have to do that before I start making a place to put them. And the other thing you can notice here is that these are in 2 halves because I want to be able to run the wire up through here, and I think it'll be easier to put everything in and be able to do that if this is detachable. So I had to come up with a latching mechanism for that. I'm also probably going to separate the club like at the ring here so that I can have this print in 2 pieces, because as is, this is like 6.5 inches tall, which is kind of small. But I think I'm going to try and get the bottom half of the club, at least the bottom half of the this half, to print with the rest of this, so that way I don't have to have some weird cut out angles on stuff. It just will all be in there. Anyway, I'm gonna move on, try and figure some stuff out with the LEDs, come back to this and see how it goes. Okay, bought LEDs. I was gonna try and buy like an array of them, but they don't make them in under like 12 volt systems, and my plan is to use a USB adapter plug to be able to run this thing, and those output at 5 volts. So if I bought the bulbs individually, these run at 3 volts, so I can actually wire up a bunch of them and just need like a resistor to bring the voltage down enough, and it should be fine. I also have a battery pack here because I have not tested these things yet. And generally speaking, household batteries run 1.5 volts. This pack holds 2 batteries, so it should light this thing. Assuming I get the direction of current right. Yep, there we go. That's pretty bright. So if I use maybe, I don't know, 4 of those in a row, it should be bright enough for a lamp. I just want to try and set up a circuit with an actual USB cable, which means doing some stuff on a breadboard. So I'm going to get that set up. I'll be right back. To get wall power for the LEDs, I took an old USB charging cable and cut the end off, so that once I figured out which wires were for power transmission, I would have an easy 5 volt supply. I'm planning on throwing a switch on there later, but for the moment I just want to test a few things because the lowest resistor I had laying around was 100 ohms, but according to the math I only need like 4.5. And what I'm doing here is just throwing that 100 ohm resistor on to see what happens, as well as running 2 lights in series. In both cases the LEDs should be underpowered, but I'm just curious if they're still bright enough or if I need to spend the 10 bucks on a box of resistors. This test actually worked a lot better than I had expected once I figured out which wires I should be using. The 100 ohm resistor did dim the light a little bit, but it wasn't terrible. Also, and I didn't notice this until after I was looking over this footage, but I accidentally wired those 2 lights in parallel, not in series, which meant that they were both getting the full 5 volts from the wall, which was super bright. You can actually see in the video the exact moment I realized it was brighter than it should have been, didn't really know why. But anyway, I'm a little confused as to why it didn't even burn out the LEDs, because they're generally kind of touchy, and the reverse voltage on these is listed as 5 volts, which I definitely applied in the wrong direction, and I don't know why they didn't break. But anyway, now that I knew I could be confident in the lights, and I needed roughly 4 of them, I decided to update the rest of this 3D model. So I have a panel up at the top that's designed to hold the lights. I have this split up into 4 separate sections so that if I move that out of the way, you can see these things slot into each other. There's a place for the wire to go up all the way through and a place for me to install a little clamping piece to hold the wire in place. So we should be all good to go on this. I'm gonna get to the 3D printing part. So here's the thing with this printer. When I went to go buy this thing, I saw that I could buy it as a kit, put it together myself, and I would save $50. So that's what I did. But, there's a lot of parts. What you're seeing here is about 6 hours of footage being compressed down into roughly a minute or so. I didn't really expect it to be simple to put a 3D printer together, but this was quite the undertaking to save 50 bucks. To be fair though, it was pretty fun to put the whole thing together, and the company that I bought it from actually sent a pack of gummy bears with it, so you can reward yourself while you're building it. I don't know, it's kind of neat. Now that I have all that together, let's start printing out this lamp. So I got everything basically printed out. It went pretty smoothly for the most part. I have a couple of pieces where I like made a typo on the dimensions, so it didn't end up fitting right. But that means now everything is just ready to be assembled. My only concern is trying to solder lights together while they're in a little plastic they're in a little plastic thing with PLA, which is designed to melt at a fairly low temperature, so I don't see that going well, but I'm just gonna go for it and see what happens, I guess. So, yeah, I'll be back in a minute. This was actually a lot easier to assemble than I had expected. The soldering iron did destroy the 3D printed parts, but I was able to use some of the misprints that I had from the mount that holds the LEDs to hold the LEDs in place while I was soldering, so I didn't break anything important. Everything fit pretty perfectly where it was supposed to, which basically never happened, so that was a nice surprise. Anyway, I got all the lights together into the top of the lamp, and I decided to use hot glue to keep everything in place after I got the main wire on. Hot glue is a really great way to keep open contacts separated from each other and prevent stuff from shorting out. The last internal piece was the little clamp to lock down the wire. I had to drill out the holes a little bit because I had sort of eyeballed the size that I needed when I made the model, and I didn't really expect a perfect fit there, but after I got the plate screwed down, I had no worries about the wire being pulled out. It held it in really tightly. A little bit more super glue and the whole thing was together. The last thing it needs is a little bit of color. The painting part's not real interesting, so let's just kind of bing, bang, boom, and now I just need to put a clear coat on it. That was a bit of a dumb transition, but I figured I couldn't do a juggling themed video without actually juggling. Anyway, I'm really happy with the way that this thing turned out. It looks like juggling props, so that's a check off on the list. But even just as a lamp, I like the aesthetics of it. The coloring works, the lights fit really well in that spot, and the clear coat gives it a nice little shine. The only real issue I have with this is that it's a bit dimmer than I had intended it to be. It still works as like a reading light in a dark room, and so it's like it has a use, but it's not desk lamp bright. And it took me a while to realize sort of why I think that is, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the way that it's wired. I did everything in parallel so that the voltage drop would be the same across the LEDs, but in doing stuff in parallel, you're also splitting the current. And these LEDs run on 0.35 amps, but a charging block can only output 1 amp. So when you split it 4 ways, they end up being underpowered. Plus there's the resistor in there, and you know. But overall, I think I'm still pretty happy with it. So I guess that's the end of the video. Congrats on making it to the end card in the first video. This was mostly a way for me to learn what I'm doing and try different types of camera shots and video formats and all that sort of stuff. Parts of this was scripted, parts of this wasn't. I'm still not really sure what qualifies as content that should go in versus stuff that should get cut out. I ended up filming hours of stuff just for this one little lamp project. But that's all stuff that I'm sure will change and fluctuate as I get more comfortable with what I'm doing here. And I think it'll be an interesting journey with a lot more fun projects to do. So if you're interested in coming along for that ride, there's a subscribe button down there somewhere. Sure, you can find it.